亲爱的朋友们，大家好，我是张德芬。现在我坐在美国田纳西州纳什维尔市的 Isha 内在科学学院，坐在我旁边的呢，就是学院的创始人萨古鲁。他是一位相当具有远见的人道主义者，同时也是影响印度当代50名最重要的人士之一。当然，他也是一位伟大的瑜伽士。今天呢，我就要就中国人常常面临现代的一些问题来请教他，希望得到他一些智慧的开示。Hi, Sadhguru. Nice meeting you. Namaskar. So first of all, I'd like to ask you one question. That is, China is now developing very fast. But with the growth of the economy, people are getting less and less happy. Many people having the depression symptoms, and many of them committed suicide, which create a huge problem for the society. And for Chinese, we think depression is kind of a mental disease, so we are ashamed to talk about it or ask for help. Or we think it's just a temporarily emotional discomfort. We ignore it. So what do you think about depression? And is there any good methods to cure it?
We can label human suffering in many different ways. You can call it varieties of depression, you can call it anxiety, you can call it stress, you can call it disease, you can call it madness.
Yes.
But essentially the problem is just this, that most human beings have not learned how to handle their own thought and emotion. Or in other words, most human beings have not learned how to handle their own intelligence. This is because right from your childhood, you're too busy wanting to conquer the world. You forgot that without having this in your control, this human mechanism, this body and this mind in your control, even if you go and sit on top of the world, still life will be miserable. So this is why inner engineering. By engineering the outside world, you will have comfort and convenience, but you will not have well-being. If well-being has to happen, you have to engineer your interiority the way you want it. When you say, today the Chinese are suffering from depression, we must understand, China as a nation is a single largest phenomena in terms of moving a large mass of people from extreme poverty to a certain level of affluence and economic and physical well-being. Probably never before in the history of humanity, nearly 1 billion people or more than 1 billion people have moved from poverty to affluence in a matter of one generation. Never before. When you move that rapidly, there will be some pains and aches but one must understand it's all worthwhile, because being in a state of poverty or in a hopeless state of poverty means that a human being has no opportunity to find expression to their life, either in terms of one's genius or their emotions or their skills or their many other capabilities. Nothing will find expression. So, when the outside becomes better than what it was in the past, we must also gear ourselves within. Otherwise, all this effort a generation of people worked to bring you to this place as a nation, all their work will go waste if you sit and suffer depressions. All this was done believing that it will bring well-being. So as external situations get better, it is very important to work on the inner situations. So this is why inner engineering becomes very important. What inner engineering means is, we have understood that in the external world, unless you handle it right things won't work. We can call this science, technology, but essentially understanding the realities and doing the right thing about it. Isn't the same attitude and approach equally important when it comes to interiority? When it comes to inner well-being, people are trying to make it happen through belief, by looking up towards heaven, or by philosophies, by ideologies. No, inner well-being also needs to be approached in a scientific manner. As we understand that the external realities must be understood in a scientific manner and handled with appropriate technologies, similarly inner well-being must be approached as a science and handled with appropriate technologies. It is these technologies for well-being that I'm referring to as inner engineering.
Okay. So can you share with us some words about inner engineering? It's some philosophy and also techniques about yoga asanas or breathing techniques or meditation that can help us to do the inner transformation.
I would like to correct the question. There is no philosophy.
Yes.
No philosophy.
Yes.
A scientific understanding of how this functions, and then methods as to how to make it work. There are many ways to look at this, there are many complex ways of looking at it. One simple way of looking at it is, see what you call as my body right now. They say, whoever measured it, they're saying that every second of your life, 37 followed by 21 zeros, that many chemical reactions are happening in this body. I'm asking you to just give you a perspective, 12 zeros means a trillion. So, 37 followed by 21 zeros, whatever that number, that many chemical reactions per second. I'm asking, have you even devised a supercomputer which can track that many chemical reactions? You cannot. But this is a supercomputer like that. Only problem is you have not even bothered to read the user's manual.
Yes.
So now, we want to teach you a technology through which you can create the right kind of chemistry. When I say the right kind of chemistry, today modern medicine and science is clearly telling you, every human experience has a chemical basis to it. What you call as peace is one kind of chemistry, what you call as joy is another kind of chemistry, what you call as ecstasy is another kind of chemistry, agony, anxiety, depression, stress, every human experience has a chemical basis to it. Now, we are looking at how to create a chemistry of blissfulness, that by your own nature, you're joyful, not because of something that's happening around you, because of what's happening within you, you're joyful. Right now, if you have to be joyful, we have to fix the entire world. Now in a generation, China as a nation has fixed many things on the outside. Now people are complaining about depression because unless you fix the interiority, your experience of life will not be good. Comfort and convenience will come, but well-being will not come. We have to understand this as a generation of people, wherever you may be, largely for most of the population on the planet, except for a certain population in the world, in certain parts of the world, largely for a whole lot of people on the planet, we're enjoying comforts and conveniences no generation ever knew in the history of humanity. We are the most comfortable generation ever, but we are not the most joyful or peaceful generation because we have not brought our inner chemistry to a state of peacefulness and joyfulness. So, there are technologies as to how to create a chemistry of joy. If your very chemistry is joyful, then you being joyful is not dependent or subject to what's happening around you. If right now someone else or something else can determine what happens within you, this is the worst form of slavery, isn't it? Somebody can make you happy, somebody can make you unhappy, somebody can make you stressful, somebody can make you depressed. This is the worst form of slavery because somebody is able to determine what happens within you. What happens within you must be 100% your business, isn't it? So, inner engineering is on many different levels, but the simplest way of expression is this: it is a way of fixing your chemistry so that it is joyful by its own nature. So when you're joyful by your own nature, one thing that happens to you is, there is no fear of suffering anymore, because you have taken the experience of your life into your hands. Only when there is no fear of suffering, you will walk full stride in your life. Otherwise, the very life becomes crippled in many ways. In our lives, if we do not do what we cannot do, that's not a problem. But in our lives, if we do not do what we can do, we're a disaster. But this is what will happen when you are not joyful by your own nature. The fear of suffering will not allow you to do even those things that you can do in your life. So, if you want to avoid this tragedy of life, that you are not a crippled life, one fundamental thing that should happen to every human being is that there is no fear of suffering. Whichever way the outside is, this is how I will be. If this assurance comes to you, then you will explore your life with much more profoundness than ever before.
I can do my testimony because after I consistently practice the techniques you taught us, I feel really much better in my inner state, which never happened in my life before.
I am a living testimony?
Yes, yes. And all your disciples, when I met them, I can tell they are really in joy and happiness.
I can show you people, in the last 10 years, they have not had a moment of stress, anxiety, anger, nothing. They just live peacefully and joyfully.
Yes. But sometimes we see people, we can tell that they are suffering, you know. We know that as long as they change their attitude or perspectives about things, or even come to learn engineering, inner engineering, or practice it, their life will be much better. But they are very stubborn, they don't want to change. And these people, how can we help them, or how can they help themselves?
Nobody enjoys suffering. There's no such thing. Suffering means no enjoyment, okay? You cannot enjoy suffering, but they think there is no other way. Yes. Because they have made investments in misery.
Okay, what do you mean by investment in misery?
They've invested in misery and they don't have the necessary wisdom and the strength to withdraw the investment or to dump the investment and build a new possibility. But this will not come by changing attitudes. This is the biggest problem. We are offering a simple technology. Why I'm insisting on this word technology is, technology does not demand belief system. Technology does not need that you have to worship it. You just have to learn to use it. Instead of learning to use it, they make a philosophy out of it. Then it doesn't work. See, you have a phone, you have to learn to use it. Instead of that, you every day light incense stick and worship it. It won't work that way. You just have to learn to use it. The same goes for this. Your body and your brain, you just have to learn to use it. You can't have attitude towards it. By changing your attitudes, it's not going to change. If you change your attitudes, socially you will be different. Within yourself you will not be different. Suppose you become very loving because somebody told you being loving is good. Other people will be deceived for some time, but you know, slowly it will build up within you and make you miserable, more miserable than ever before, because trying to love somebody is very stressful and painful. If your very chemistry is joyful, then you will respond to everything around you in a very pleasant manner. The pleasantness of emotion is what we call as love. Pleasantness of body is called health. Pleasantness of mind is called peace and joy. Pleasantness of emotion is called love and compassion. Pleasantness of your very life energies is called bliss and ecstasy. So instead of bringing pleasantness into your system, you're trying to practice it by changing attitudes. By changing attitudes, if you try to practice it, initially it feels nice, but after some time, that will be the most taxing thing in your life. trying to love, trying to smile, trying to be joyful, it'll not work. If you change the fundamentals of who you are, if you take away the friction within you, being peaceful, joyful, blissful is a natural consequence of that.
So the joy we got from practicing inner engineering techniques is from what? The breathing, asanas and the body work? And then get into the emotional part?
Because the chemistry is changing. You can have it checked up. You can have it checked up. The very chemistry is changing. Many of you, even if you try to get angry, you can't get angry. Try and see.
I see, okay. Well, here comes another question about intimate relationship. So what is the functionality of intimate relationship besides that we're forming a family and raising kids? If we are on spiritual path and we are single, do we need to have is it necessary to have an intimate relationship? Is it an aid or a hindrance to our spiritual path?
Spiritual process is about turning inward. When it comes to going inward, you can't go hand in hand with somebody. Nobody else can go inside except you. This is a private place. So if you have needs, if you have physical needs, psychological needs, emotional needs, economic or social needs, you form relationships to fulfill that. That's not for something for me to comment because it is an individual need. Each individual may have different kinds of needs. For some it may be mild, for some it may be strong. It is an individual requirement. There is no common prescription that everybody should have a relationship or everybody should not have, there's no such thing. Anyway, to quote somebody, when someone asked this question to Gautama, the Buddha, Gautama said, "It's better to walk alone than to walk with a fool." Not me, I didn't say that. Gautama the Buddha said this because he believes only a fool will choose to walk with you. I'm not saying that, Tiffany.
But intimate relationships sometimes can really break your shell and bring yourself to see that, what's going on inside of you. Sometimes we tend to ignore it. We pretend to be peaceful. But whenever it comes to intimate relationship, it gets so difficult to remain peaceful and happy and joyful all the time. So that's a good test.
It depends who you're with.
How about a wise guy? If I date a wise guy.
A wise guy may not date you.
Okay, because I'm stupid. All right, okay, got that. Okay, another question is very China specific. In China, like filial piety is the essence of our 5,000-year culture, which means you have to be very obedient to your parents, listen to them, bonded with them. But with the transition of time, right now in the modern society, many of the old concepts doesn't work anymore. So, but I see many people are still attached to their parents and entangled with their parents, which will impact their welfare, happiness, and independency. Can you shed some light on this?
I don't think filial piety has been the way of life for 5,000 years. It cannot be in any society. Maybe it has been there for the last maybe a few hundred years. I would say that is the downfall of a society. Maybe China, which was a great culture at one time, went down mainly because of this filial piety, because what this means is obedience is all. Obedience means there is an authority. It may be a parent, it may be a priest, it may be God, or it may be a scripture. Whatever the authority says must be right. This will destroy human intelligence. If you make authority the truth, then everything is destroyed. Truth should be the only authority. The next generation should do something that we could not imagine possible. Only then it is fruitful to have a next generation. If the next generation is going to take instructions from us on all levels and do only what we want, then it's a meaningless next generation. There is nothing next about it. It is just graveyard of the past popping up in future, which is waste of life. We produce a next generation because we believe it's a new possibility. If it's not a new possibility, it just takes instructions from the old, then it's a no good new generation. And instead of those, because of their authoritative nature, who could not earn the necessary love and affection from their children, love, affection, respect must be earned, must never be demanded. The moment you demand it, it becomes ugly. So at least in the parent-child relationship, it's important that respect, love, affection, one must earn. If you simply demand it, you become an authority. If you're an authority, you'll always be resented. So if resentment is the basis of one's relationship, it can never be beautiful. It has to become ugly after some time. Above all, it stagnates a society. I think it's good that you mentioned this because China is a clear example of a great culture becoming stagnant over a period of time and going down completely. Now once again, you came up not because you became obedient, you came up because of a revolution. A revolution means the young generation started doing something that the parents never imagined possible.
Yes. So yeah, here comes another related question, which means in China, people tend to choose to live the right way, which means in accordance with the mainstream value. But if they want to seek for self-value or the meaning of life or higher goal, which will in conflict with what their parents or the society agrees. So what's your suggestion? How should we live our life the best? And then how to live like truthfully and naturally?
Truth is a natural happening. If you invent it, that's called a lie. Truth is not something that you invent, truth is something that you realize. Lie is something that you invent. So you don't have to say truthfully, naturally. What is natural is truth. So, should one follow the precepts of the past or should one come to something new? There should not be a compulsion about breaking the rules of the past, nor there should be a compulsion that you must only do it the way of the past. It is important that every generation looks at what is really needed, what is not needed. If you do not discard the garbage that you develop in your house, after some time, your whole house will be a garbage bin, isn't it? Every day you must throw out the garbage, then only the house is clean. Similarly in our lives, many things that don't work, we must throw them out on a daily basis. If we don't do that, as a culture, if you don't do it for hundreds of years, then you become stagnant. When you become stagnant, nothing works. Well, as a culture, the Chinese people have experienced this. That is why a revolution was needed to break that mold. Don't once again go into the same thing. Now, revolution need not be one big upheaval in a society. Revolution is the way we think. Right now, if we are constantly looking for better ways of doing every aspect of our life, I'm saying from the simplest, if you just start looking, what is the best way to sit? Invariably you will come to me, you will want to learn yoga. If you start looking, what is the best way to breathe? I'm saying these are all vital things. What is the best way to eat? What is the best way to manage my body? If you just start thinking like this, you will start doing yoga. That is, you will start approaching your physical and mental well-being in a scientific manner. Similarly, what is the best way to interact between two neighbors? If you look at it truthfully, then you will arrive at a science what works best between neighbors, rather than trying to weave a philosophy around it. So, the philosophies of the past also might have been sense at one time, which turned into a kind of a precept over a period of time, then it turned into a law, then it turned into a belief system, then it becomes a religion over a period of time. Instead of that, we have to come to our senses about everything. But will we arrive at an ultimate answer for everything? Maybe not, because changing realities are there. So one way of looking at life is, first and fundamental thing is, there is substantial scientific and medical evidence to show you that your body and your brain will function at its best only when you're joyful. So first thing is this, that you have a body and brain which works well. You have a functioning brain. If this has to happen, you must be in a pleasant state of experience. So first thing is to become joyful by your own nature. If you manage this, you have a functioning brain. Have you noticed this? When you're happy, you find solutions. When you're unhappy, you create problems. Have you not noticed this in every situation in your life? So, this is important. The first and basic thing, this is not done. People think pursuit of happiness is to be achieved. You must be successful towards the end of your life. No, this is the very first thing, that you are joyful by your own nature. Now you have a functioning intelligence, which is not encumbered by any compulsions. You are in pursuit of happiness means you are encumbered by all kinds of compulsions. I am joyful means you're not encumbered by anything. Now you can look at things just the way they are. Only if you see things just the way they are, not from a prejudiced mind, simply the way they are, then you will also come up with solutions every day, better and better solutions. If you cannot even see what is there because you have prejudiced opinions about everything, then how a solution will come when you don't even figure the problem? How will you come up with a solution?
Well, since you mentioned yoga, I do have two questions about yoga. In China, the mainstream yoga practitioners, they are more seeing yoga as a physical exercise to help them like get
I thought that's only in
slimmer.
America.
No, the same everywhere. Get weight loss or enhance their health. So but for advanced practitioners, they may want to see how their practice can go inward to change the inner world. So do you have any suggestion on that? How do you do yoga from outward to inward?
The word yoga means union. Are you breathing right now?
Yes.
You are. But most of the time, most human beings are not conscious that they're breathing. Breath means, on one level, you're in union with the rest of the atmosphere. That's what it means. If you breathe, you're breathing in the world in many ways. Today there is substantial evidence to show there is enormous memory in the air that you breathe. It has gone through so many things, everything is there in some sense. So, when you breathe, you're in union with the atmosphere around us. When you eat, you're in union with the earth which you walk upon. When you drink water, you're in contact with everything around you. But it's not in your experience. If, for example, if you were conscious, what you exhale, these trees are inhaling, what they're exhaling, you're inhaling. Suppose you were conscious, not in your mind, not as a thought, but as a living experience. You understood, you experienced that one part of your lungs is actually the tree. If you experience this, do I have to teach you what is the right thing to do about the tree? Do I have to tell you?
No.
No. In United States, generally these things are referred to as woods because they need furniture at home. Their homes are built with wood. So they need wood. So whoever came here first, they saw the tree and they called it a wood. If you had no compulsions of furniture, if you really looked at a tree and inhaled what the tree is exhaling, you would see it as a part of your life. And it is. Will you realize this after all the trees are gone and your life is going? Or will you realize it now? This is the question. This is not just about… I'm not talking ecology, I'm talking about fundamental life-making material. The water that you drink, the air that you breathe, the food that you eat, the earth that you walk upon, these are all life-making material. This is your life, spread out there. When you gather it, you think it's me. When it's thrown around, you think it's not you. Yoga means you experience everything as yourself. Or in other words, breaking the boundaries of your physical boundary that you are in. But now, a whole lot of people are using yoga to consolidate their boundary. They think they're doing yoga to build abs. Instead of opening up the boundaries of your body, you're trying to consolidate the boundaries of your body. This is like using an airplane to dig into the earth. You know, if you want to dig into the earth also, there are borers which rotate. So you get an airplane where propellers are rotating and you try to dig into the earth, you will realize that it's not made for that purpose and obviously you will be frustrated, and that's all that's happening right now. Every day you get up and twist and turn, after some time you'll get bored and say, hell with it. And you'll do something else after some time. Only if you use an instrument for the purpose for which it is created. If I ask you to unscrew this screw in the furniture, if you try with your hands, all your nails will go. I will allow you to use your teeth, they will also go. But if I give you a simple screwdriver, you will get it out, isn't it? I gave you a screwdriver, you don't know what to do with it, so you put it in your ears and turned it. Damage may happen, well-being will not happen. But a screwdriver can be fantastic if you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, it works against you. So I'm using a very simple basic example, but yoga is a very complex, very complex instrument or a technology. Far more complex than most people ever imagine. If you use it well, you can make the entire cosmos happen within you. That's what it means. Yoga means union. Union means if you sit here removing the boundaries of your physical nature, you can sit here experiencing the entire cosmos within yourself. But now, you're using the instrument of yoga to build a wall that nobody can crack.
So how can yoga create something like that, so
That's magically? Why I'm coming to China.
Oh, okay. Because, for example, we are in a mountain pose, and if we do it as just asanas, or we do it as you say as a tool to feel the nature, feel that we are part of the nature, or we are one with the nature. Can you tell the difference, or what's the trick? Is it in the breathing, or
no.
How you do it?
First thing is, there is no trick. The problem is in the transmission, the way it is transmitted. See, if I give you a flower, it is alive, it's full of life. You will have to care for it in a certain way. When I find you don't know how to hold a flower, there are people like this, I give them a flower, they will grab it like this. Those who don't know what it is, they will grab it like this, flower will die right there in their hands. So then, what to do? Then we will give you a plastic flower. All over China, there are lots of plastic flowers. In every hotel room I go, I see plastic flowers everywhere. Because for people who are unconscious, plastic flowers are best. Plastic flower only looks like a flower, but it's just a piece of plastic, it's not a flower. Flower means it is the peak of that life. A plant is there, what is the peak of its life? flowering, isn't it? It's the peak. Flower is a representation of the peak that life can attain to. But you make a plastic flower and give it because it's convenient, and you can hold it whichever way you want, you can even beat your children with it if they're not obedient. Now, you have a piece of plastic which you think is flower. So this is what is happening to yoga. Without the subjectivity, just the instructions are going. So you have a stillbirth. Isn't it better not to get pregnant than to have a stillbirth? So if fitness is what you're looking for, please go swim in the Yellow River, play tennis, climb a mountain, do something for fitness. Yoga definitely gives you fitness, not just physical fitness, it gives you fitness on all levels, but that is not the reason why you practice it. You practice yoga because you want to become one with everything. So in the transmission, there must be subjectivity. Right now, we have become slaves of objectivity because we are not using any other form of intelligence within us except the intellect. If you use only the intellect, is it true that intellect is useful only if it's sharp like a knife? You want a dull intellect or a sharp intellect?
Sharp.
Sharp. So it's a knife. Now you use a knife to stitch, you will only tear it further. Knife is not an appropriate instrument to stitch. If you want to stitch, you need something else. But now you're using a knife to stitch, it's not going to work. So, yoga, unfortunately, is going through this phase around the world that only the physical aspect, a stillborn child is being delivered. People think they got a baby. They don't have a baby, they have a dead baby. It still looks like a baby, of course, but it's not alive, it's not going to grow. If you have a plastic flower, it's not going to blossom, isn't it? So this is not going to blossom. Maybe you will get abs if you stretch and turn enough, but you are strengthening the wall instead of opening up the wall.
So
No, I'm only talking about the wall of your body, not the China wall.
Yeah, okay. So the critical point is not how you do it, but how it was transmitted to you?
Both. It is equally important. How it is transmitted is vital, but how you receive it is also important. How you practice it is also important. Without bringing those dimensions into the process, if you just bring a bunch of instructions, then it becomes a very objectified yoga. With this, you may get physical fitness, but that is like using an airplane like a bullock cart. That which can fly, you make it crawl around, what is the use? If you see a bird whose wings are damaged and it cannot fly, do you feel sad about it? Yes?
Yes.
But if you see a buffalo without wings, you don't feel sad about it, isn't it? Because a buffalo is only supposed to do that. But when you see a bird which could fly and now it cannot fly, that saddens you, isn't it? If I was capable of becoming sad, looking at the yoga in the world, I would have become sad, but I've become incapable of becoming sad, so
So what makes Isha Yoga different from normal yoga?
subjectivity.
Can you elaborate more on subjectivity?
Isha Yoga is never taught by a professional teacher, never. Unless they hold it above their life, unless they hold it more important than their life, I will not let them teach Isha Yoga. Not as a profession, not as a hobby, not as entertainment, no. You must hold it as something more important than your life. Then only we will let you teach, because only then we can load subjectivity into the yoga that is offered. Otherwise, you will become professional. If people pay you more, you will do little more. If people pay you less, you will do little less. It'll not work like that. Once that calculation comes, it will not work. Right now it's working the way it's working because it's delivered through dedicated people who are willing to give their life for it.
So when we practice Isha Yoga, we also have to give our life to it. That's the correct way to practice it?
If you give your life to it,
or
it will enhance your life in a way that you've not imagined possible.
Yeah.
But I am not demanding that out of every practitioner, but those who want to deliver must hold it that way, otherwise it'll not work.
Could it be possible that we do Isha Yoga the way we do the normal technique, without spirit, without life, or make it like just a normal
That is what…
exercise?
If you drive your airplane on the street and if you're happy, what can I do about it?
Okay.
I'm telling you it can fly.
Okay. Thank you. That's… I think that's all the questions I have to ask. Thank you so much, Sadhguru. Thank you. You have anything to say to our China audience?
I would say China is a very unique and a successful experiment of our generation. In the 20th century, probably one of the biggest happenings on the planet is the Chinese people rising above their poverty, Chinese people rising from the pits of poverty and lethargy into an active force in the world, which is a tremendous thing for any civilization to do. But it is also time that the Chinese people turn inward. The last generation maybe had no time even to think about their joy. But this generation must look at this, because a time has come from simply hard work to smart work has come. The previous generation spent its time in hard work. This generation must do the work in a smart manner. For this to happen, your brain and body must function at its best, and that will not happen unless you know how to be peaceful and joyful by your own nature. In the process of creating the external, if you destroy the internal, then the very purpose is defeated. We are burning the world for nothing if people are not happy in the end. This is the right juncture where, after having achieved a certain level of physical and material well-being, the Chinese people must also invest in their interiority. We must give up this insecurity that inner well-being will bring external lethargy. We must give up that idea, because you know from your experience, only when you're truly joyful, you're willing to do whatever is needed. When you're little depressed, we can't get you going, isn't it? You can't get a depressed person to be active and doing what is required to be done. But a joyful person is always willing to run and do things, not walk. He is willing to do everything possible, bend backwards if it's necessary. So this flexibility has to come into the Chinese people. This flexibility has to come into entire administration of the Chinese nation, because I think it's an incredible achievement that 1 billion people have been taken from the depths of poverty to a certain level of well-being in one generation. This is something that the humanity should be proud of, because never before such a thing has happened.